Johnson. I am one of the directors of the Office of International Education, and my co-conspirator, so to speak, Professor Nellie Khalil, is also here, and very happy to welcome all of you to this event. We are pleased to introduce you to and welcome a former student and a most honorable alumna of Harper College, Ms. Arianna Mormino. And today there she is waving, and her proud mom is clapping. Thank you, excellent. Today she's graciously agreed to talk about climate change implications on the environment and wildlife in Southwest Florida. And you can, oh, Chloe, you can see her title there. And we will be taking questions at the end. So if you could either write down or type into the chat your questions, I will collect them all and ask, but we will also have an opportunity for you to unmute and ask questions of Ms. Mormino at the end. So without further ado, welcome, Arianna. Thank you so much. We're very excited to hear about your topic.
Thank you so much, Professor Johnson, for that introduction. I apologize for my raspy voice. I have a bit of a sore throat right now, so if you see me kind of chugging water during my presentation, that's why. But good afternoon again. My name is Arianna Mormino, and it is a pleasure to be presenting to you guys today about climate change implications on the environment, and specifically the wildlife in Southwest Florida. So first, I'd like to just let you know a little bit more about myself. So my ultimate career path in life is to become a veterinarian. I have loved and been passionate about animals ever since I was little. And I actually started my college academic career at Harper in 2017, but really Harper's been a second home to me ever since I was little. I remember being dropped off at daycare in J building when my mom had to go to work, and doing in-zone classes, playing basketball, going fishing. So really, I have grown up at Harper. And but when I was starting my collegiate career, I didn't want to go to Harper. I, again, gave into those negative stereotypes that there seems to be about community colleges. That community colleges aren't real colleges, that you're not going to be getting the full college experience, as maybe some of you in the audience may be able to relate to. But I found that those stereotypes were completely false. I made some of the best memories at Harper, whether it be through studying abroad with Professor Johnson and Professor Maitha, doing a service learning trip in Nicaragua with my English 102 honors class, receiving the Hope Scholarship, which stands for helping others through the power of education, specifically young women who are looking to go forward in their educational career, and being surrounded by independent, successful women and receiving mentorship opportunities. Also being a part of the honors and PTK programs where I was able to do volunteering and just be a part of amazing opportunities on campus. And also being taught by amazing professors in a variety of departments who are genuinely passionate about what they teach, and you can tell that they care about their students. So I am so thankful to Harper for everything and for being able to speak to you all today. So I received my associates in science at Harper in 2019, and then I transferred to Loyola University Chicago. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, I wasn't able to really take advantage of the things that I wanted to do while I was there, but I still joined awesome clubs, took really fun classes, and had some great professors there as well. So I received my bachelor's degree in science and biology this year in May. And currently I am working at the Animal Doctor, which is a companion animal veterinary practice near my house. If you don't know what companion animals are, those are basically any animals that you can have as pets, even reptiles, but unfortunately we don't see reptiles at my clinic. But I started shadowing there when I was a freshman in high school because I knew veterinary medicine was something I was interested in, but I didn't really know much about it. So this shadowing opportunity was a great way to kind of dip my foot in the water. And I fell in love with the field. And I actually started working at this clinic during my early college years, and I've been there ever since. So it's been an amazing opportunity working with small animals. So now that I've graduated from college, I have decided to take this year as my gap year, not only to give myself sort of like a mental break before I move on, uh, going to vet school, but also to take this time to apply to vet schools because it's a very lengthy process. And I actually just finished applying in September, so fingers crossed. I'm waiting to hear from schools. But I also decided I wanted to keep working and finding more animal opportunities. And luckily, one of those opportunities arose when I found out about the Crow Clinic, which is a wildlife rehab center in Sanibel Island, Florida. And so I was able to do an externship there this year from September to October. And wildlife medicine is kind of one realm of veterinary medicine that I'm really interested in. So I was excited for this opportunity. So just to let you know a little bit more about the Crow Clinic, it stands for the Center for the Rehabilitation of Wildlife. It opened in 1968, and they are dedicated to giving top-notch wildlife veterinary medicine care while also doing research, educating the public on wildlife, and also taking part in conservation medicine. As I mentioned before, I did a 2-month undergraduate student externship. Um, and I was in Southwest Florida, about an hour away from Fort Myers. You know, I had to include a map because I would have been in trouble with Professor Mormino and Professor Mitha. So, um, so I was in Southwest Florida, and I just wanted to include this cute little emblem that they have on their website. But Crow has a visitor center where you can take tours of the clinic, the rehab center. You can learn more about wildlife. And they have a training hospital, which is where I was. As you can see from this picture, you would find me mostly on that second level, getting hands-on experience with the wildlife of the area. And they also have a rehab center on that first level where I was also working. So I was able to do amazing things there, such as taking part in procedures and surgeries. For example, here I'm pumping an ambu bag, which basically fills this brown pelican's lungs with air because he's under anesthesia. He came into us with a hook injury in his foot, so he had to receive antibiotics, and it's a pretty stressful procedure, so that's why it's basically like he's under anesthesia. I also learned how to responsibly and safely hold these animals and manage them, for it to be a non-stressful and safe experience for both myself and the animal. And I also learned how to administer fluids, medications, and food to the animals while also learning about their diets and more about them in general. So just amazing experience overall. And Crow receives over 5,000 patients every year. And I was lucky enough to be there when the 5,000th patient of 2021 came in, which was this magnificent frigate bird. Yes, it's quite magnificent. So this guy came into us. He was waterlogged, so basically saturated in water, and he had swelling of his feet. So we're not sure if that was some connection there, like why he wasn't able to get out of the water like he usually would be able to. But eventually, with some rehab, some cage rest, medications, he was able to be released. And this is a picture of him being released and flying away into the sky. And these guys are quite magnificent because the males have this red or pink throat pouch that they use to attract the females. And they also are kind of like the bullies of the sky because they will harass other birds until those birds regurgitate up their recently caught food so that the frigate bird can eat it. So that's also why they're called the man of war. So it was really cool to get to work with this guy. Other animals that I worked with at Crow are included on this slide. Mostly I worked with birds, both land and seabirds. So we have the double-crested cormorant. We have the anhinga, who has this razor-sharp beak that can literally pierce through your eye. So you have to wear goggles and gloves when handling this bird. The royal tern, very sassy guy. Barred owl, which literally looks like it came out of a movie. They're beautiful owls. Mourning doves, white ibises, laughing gulls that literally sound like they're laughing when they vocalize. Screech owls, Cooper's hawks, ospreys, and my personal favorite, they're like basically my favorite animal now, are brown pelicans. These guys have such big personalities. They're so sassy, and they were just a pleasure to work with. I really love I love this bird. And then I also got to work with a bunch of baby animals. I felt like I was a mother. I was literally up at 6 a.m. some days feeding these babies, or up still at 11 p.m. feeding them. But it was amazing. So flying baby squirrels, regular squirrels, baby opossums, baby raccoons. I also got to work with a coyote, turtles and tortoises, and many more. So just an overall amazing experience. And during my experience, not only was I able to witness wildlife veterinary medicine in this setting, but I also was able to see just how much climate change is affecting the animals in this area. So, for example, besides coming in with injuries from fishing lines, hooks, boat accidents, which was a majority of animals, also predatory attacks, dehydration, and more, red tide poisoning was a huge reason why patients were coming in. As you can see on the background of this slide is a red tide bloom, also called a harmful algal bloom. So it basically turns the ocean red or brown, and it's caused by algae. So one of the first patients that I worked with at Crow when I got there was a wood stork. It's this really prehistoric looking bird. It's a wading bird. And this guy had come in because he couldn't stand, couldn't walk, couldn't raise his wings, couldn't raise his head. So the vets thought that he was suffering from a systemic disease, or a disease that affects all systems of the body, or also red tide poisoning. And this is something that I had never seen of, never heard of, and it's something that afflicts this part of the United States. So a little bit of background on algae in general. Algae thrive in warm, calm, preferably shallow water so that they can rise easily to the surface of the water. And they are essential to the ocean because they actually harness energy from the sun to fuel the oceanic food web, and in controllable quantities. Because an issue starts to arise when you get algae growing to growing to abundant numbers, specifically algae that have toxic characteristics. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, harmful algal blooms are colonies of algae that grow uncontrollably and can cause toxic effects to not only animals, but also humans. Algae growth can be triggered both naturally and unnaturally. According to the Smithsonian, when rivers flood naturally and they bring nutrient-rich soils from surrounding grasslands or forest areas, algae can feed off of these nutrients. Also, when nitrogen-rich fertilizer or livestock excrements from farms run off into natural water sources that then reach the oceans, those are things that algae also feed on, and then they can grow rapidly and abundantly. So this is an issue that we're seeing in this part of the US. And there are many types of algal species, but the one that specifically affects the Southwest Florida area is Cormorant brevis, which is this single-celled organism that is part of the dinoflagellate monophyletic group. Dinoflagellate meaning just the way that it moves around. And to the right here is a light microscopy picture of Cormorant brevis. And so this type of algae is interesting because it produces what's called a brevetoxin, which is a neurotoxin that disrupts the firing of nerve cells, which, as it spreads up the food web, becomes an issue. So it starts with fish and bivalves, and then those get eaten by the predator, and it just keeps going up and up the food chain until it reaches a large animal such as a sea turtle or a marine bird. And if it's not caught quick enough, they will pass away. Another thing that red tides do is create these things called dead zones. And these are zones where the water has been depleted of dissolved oxygen. So basically, when the algae dies, it becomes dinner for microbes and bacteria in the ocean. So they will feed off of these algae, they'll multiply, and they'll need to take in oxygen to keep surviving. So zones of the ocean will become depleted in oxygen because of these microbes feeding on the algae. And so fish and other sea creatures will either have to move out of these zones or they end up dying in masses. Red tide blooms usually begin in the late summer or early fall, and they can last through the winter. And according to Florida's Department of Health, the occurrence of red tide can't quite be predicted, but scientists can forecast its movement using wind and water data once they've actually located a bloom. So here you can see in this map, this is Carina brevis concentrations that were present in Southwest Florida's coast in 2018 specifically. You can't really tell, but Lee County is the lowermost county that's listed there, and that's where Sanibel Island is. And they had medium to high concentrations, which is kind of scary. And here is actually a video that shows just how bad red tide can get. You can start to see tons of dead fish wash up on shore, tons of dead wildlife washing up on shore, which is not normal. So that's the way that red tide can wreak havoc on the coast of this area. So those sadly are a lot of dead fish on the shore. So according to an article by Audubon, which is this national society that protects birds and their environments through advocacy, education, and more, 4 out of 5 of the latest long-lasting red tides have occurred within the last 3 decades, which is pretty alarming. And in 2018, one of the most devastating blooms hit Southwest Florida, and more than 2,000 tons of sea life died, which is incredibly sad. Excuse me. One of the vets that I worked with, Dr. Robin Bass, she was actually interviewed for this article, and she stated that more than 450 birds came into Crow with red tide symptoms, which is a lot for one season. She also talked about this specific case that she had come in with a 350-pound loggerhead sea turtle, which you can see some pictures here on this slide, just of how big they are. And this sea turtle had come in with suspected brevetoxicosis caused by red tide blooms. And the turtle had a grand mal seizure. I mean, just imagine a sea turtle of this, weight and how big it is having a seizure. And she stated to see an animal that old that has gone through that much time in the environment without any real issue, and now to see it go through all of that and then fight to save it, but despite everything you do, you can't save them all. Those are the tough ones. And then another vet at the clinic that I worked with, Dr. Heather Barron, who is the hospital coordinator at Crow, she was also interviewed, and she said that birds can come into Crow affected by red tide poisoning, and they can develop kidney failure. Again, they can have seizures. If they have parasites that are already affecting them, those parasites can feed off their weakened immune system and kill them. They can come in with pneumonia from swallowing seawater because they're not able to fly or swim out of the water. And most of the times they come in with those neurological issues. And even humans can be affected. So if you were to inhale or swim in red tide infected waters, or oceans, this could cause irritation to your nose, throat, and eyes. And you could also have coughing, wheezing, and shortness of breath. Also, people who ingest shellfish that have concentrations of brevetoxin can actually suffer from neurotoxic poisoning. So this is something that affects animals, but also humans as well. So red tide events have risen since the 1950s and 60s, and blooms are occurring more frequent. I apologize. Have been occurring more frequently and often last for months, according to Daniel Baden, who is the director of the Center for Marine Science at the University of South Carolina, Wilmington. So the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has stated some climate impacts that might be affecting these algal blooms and causing them to grow so abundantly and rapidly. One of those is that the average sea level has risen 5 to 8 inches since the pre-industrial era of around 1900. And here's a graphic just to show you what that's looked like over the years, but I will be going into this more in depth later. So this rise could be creating areas of more shallow and stable water, which is ideal for that algae growth. Also, the average global temperature on Earth has increased by a little bit more than 1 degree Celsius or 2 degrees Fahrenheit since the pre-industrial era. I will also be going over this a little bit more in depth, but here is another visual. Those blue values there are colder than usual years, and those red values are warmer than usual years. So you can see, as of recently, we've been having a lot more warmer than usual years. So these water temperatures are leading to warmer water levels, which is preventing water from mixing. So algae can grow to be more numerous faster. And on top of that, as I mentioned before, algae absorb sunlight. So blooms are able to make the water even warmer and promote the growth of more blooms. Climate change also can affect rainfall patterns because rising temperatures intensify the Earth's water cycle, which increases evaporation. And when we get increased evaporation, this leads to stronger storms and more periods of drought. And so these two events can cause more nutrient runoff into bodies of water such as the ocean, which then serves to feed algae. So during my time at Crow, I again witnessed many animals come in with red tide symptoms. And I arrived in late summer to early fall, which is right when red tide was kind of coming into the full swing. So getting back to the wood stork, luckily it survived with the right medications, physical therapy, and even a swing that the vet techs had made to kind of stabilize him because he couldn't even stand. He gradually was able to stand up again. He was able to eat and lift his head. And after about 20 days, he was released. But unfortunately, this isn't the case for some of the animals that come in with red tide poisoning. For example, we had a bridled tern come in, which is a bird that's rarely seen on land. So while it was really cool to see this bird, it was concerning because we shouldn't have been seeing him, you know? So this bird, again, was having neurological issues. He was also having a hard time breathing. So just so you get an idea of how we go about treating red tide patients, we first put them in an oxygen chamber, such as this bridled tern, if they're not breathing well. Then we go about giving them intravenous lipid emulsion therapy, or IVLE. According to the Morris Animal Foundation, brevetoxins actually bind to an animal's fatty tissue. So IVLE will bind to the toxin and it can then be excreted from the animal. Also, we give fluids to try to help that toxin process through the liver and kidney so that they don't get failure of those organs. But sadly, though, sometimes the poisoning is too advanced when the animal reaches a clinic. And for example, this bridled tern was found deceased the next morning. So although red tide is something that doesn't affect Illinois specifically, I think it's important to still know and understand the havoc that it can wreak on communities and ecosystems such as the ones in Southwest Florida so that we can better understand climate change implications as a whole. So now I would like to focus on a specific animal that is found in Southwest Florida that I had the pleasure of working with that is greatly affected by climate change, which are sea turtles. So there are 7 different species, and you won't find these flatback or olive ridley sea turtles by Sanibel, but you will find the rest of them. And it's just amazing to see just how big some of these sea turtles can get, such as the leatherback. And according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, when the summer months roll around, pregnant female sea turtles will actually go back to the beaches that they themselves hatched from in the summer to dig their own nests and lay their own eggs. And they can lay up to 100 eggs. And then once 60 days have hatched or 60 days have passed that the eggs have been incubating, the eggs will then hatch. Unfortunately, though, once these eggs hatch, life is truly a struggle for survival. According to NASA, for every 1,000 sea turtle eggs laid, only about 1 egg will reach adulthood, which is very unfortunate. The picture on the bottom is of a juvenile Kemp's Ridley that I had the chance to work with, who was found with minor abrasions and shell wounds due to being entangled in fishing line. And fortunately, he was able to be released. But again, life is truly a struggle for survival when they first hatch, because once they hatch, they have to be able to evade natural predators, human obstacles. The hatchlings have to be able to look at the reflection of the moon and the stars to actually reach the ocean. Once they've reached the ocean, they have to be able to hide, but then also find food so that they can grow. So it's honestly a hard time for them. And as I mentioned earlier, the Earth's surface temperature is increasing, which is negatively affecting many species, but very much so sea turtles. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, concentrations of heat-trapping greenhouse gases are increasing in the Earth's atmosphere, so that average temperatures at the Earth's surface are increasing, and they will keep rising in the future. Since 1901, average surface temperature across the US has risen at an average rate of 0.16 Fahrenheit. And the average global temperature on Earth, as I mentioned before, has increased by a little bit more than 1 degree Celsius or 2 degrees Fahrenheit since the pre-industrial era. So you may be thinking, why should I care about such a seemingly small change in temperature? Well, the global temperature record, according to NASA's Earth Observatory page, is an average over the entire surface of the planet, which when you think about it, that's a pretty big surface. And this depends on the energy that the planet receives from the sun and how much of that energy radiates back into space. And these are quantities that vary very little. The amount of energy that is radiated by Earth depends on the chemical composition of the atmosphere. Specifically how many greenhouse gases there are, which again trap heat and essentially increase in the temperature of the Earth over time. Most greenhouse gas emissions are human caused and create carbon dioxide emissions from burning fossil fuels. So this 1 degree Celsius or 2 degrees Fahrenheit increase is actually significant because it takes a lot to warm the Earth, which includes the land, the ocean, and the atmosphere. And in the past, a 1 to 2 degree drop was all it took to plunge the Earth into the little ice age. Also, the global average temperature is increasing by 0.2 degrees Celsius every decade. So by 2040, global warming will likely reach 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level, which is truly alarming because that's not that far from now. So this means that we'll continue to see ice melting faster, we'll see stronger tropical storms and storms in general, which makes even more severe damage, greater effects on drought and flooding, and even more. And the consequences will be doubled once we reach that 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. The chart to the right here shows the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and how that has a strong correlation with rising temperatures. Unfortunately, the harsh reality that I came to learn and witness for myself was that, according to discussions that I had with the vets at Crow and what they've seen over the past years, many sea turtle hatchlings are coming in with deformities. And they believe that sea turtles are incubating at much higher temperatures than normal, which is causing these deformities. So one of the first experiences that I had with some hatchlings was with 2 loggerhead turtle hatchlings, very cute. But unfortunately, it was evident that these were not normal hatchlings. One of the babies, which is not pictured here, actually had a deformity to its skull, where the bottom of its jaw did not line up with the top part of its jaw, which obviously is not ideal for eating. It also had deformities to its eyes that basically rendered it blind. This baby that's pictured here, you can't really tell, but on that rightmost picture, it has a deformity to its left flipper. And it also has what's called kyphosis, which is kind of like the outward curving of the shell, which again, you can't really tell from these pictures, but that's a deformity that he was born with. Most sea turtles can do okay in the wild with that deformity, but it's not normal. So while we'll never know what truly caused these babies to have these deformities, there is a high chance that it could be due to the temperatures at which they incubated. According to Mariana Fuentes of James Cook University in Australia, warmer temperatures bring reduced hatchling success, more deformities, and actually above 91 degrees Fahrenheit, many species of sea turtles will die inside of their egg. Another alarming effect that climate change is having on sea turtles that I was able to discuss with the vets at Crow, but not quite able to see for myself because it's very hard to see these things without microscopes and all that stuff. It has to do with sex determination and sex ratios. So according to Carbon Brief, which is a website that covers everything from climate science to climate policy to energy policy, is that certain animals, such as sea turtles, use TSD, or temperature-dependent sex determination, where the gender of the animal is controlled in a non-genetic way by the temperature that the animal is exposed to while developing. For example, with sea turtles, the temperature of the sand is what determines the gender that the clutch will be born as, which is very interesting to me. So basically, warmer sand around the nest is going to lead to a higher probability of female hatchlings, while cooler sand around the nest is going to lead to a higher probability of males hatching. So according to the Embryo Project Encyclopedia at Arizona State University, one cause of TSD is the enzyme aromatase, which influences sex development and reproduction because it controls hormones called sex steroids that actually influence this gender development and reproduction. So it changes the males, it changes them from males to female sex hormones. Aromatase levels remain low for most of development, but they actually increase during this period called the thermosensitive period. Now, this is a period that's very critical because during egg incubation, this is where sex is irreversibly determined. So at this period, the egg is either going to become a male or it's going to become a female. There's no going back from that. So as you can see from the visual at the top here, when we have lower temperatures, this leads to lower aromatase activity, which then produces testes or males. When we have high temperatures, it leads to high aromatase activity or the production of ovaries or females. In Southwest Florida, which is an important breeding spot for loggerhead sea turtles, there has been a strong female bias in the sea turtles that have hatched over the past 5 years, with some areas having around 95% females hatching. That is a very high number. And according to a study done by Paris and other authors, the critical temperature of leatherback sea turtles, for example, is estimated to be between 84 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit to be producing at a ratio of 1:1 male to female. So as you can see from this visual here, this is the critical temperature or pivotal temperature for loggerheads, which happens to be between 84 and 87 degrees Fahrenheit. So you basically want to be within this range to be having 1:1 male to female ratio. Otherwise, if you're under that, you're going to be getting males. If you're above that, you're going to be getting females. So as temperatures continue to rise due to global warming, sea turtles, they may not initially be as badly affected because females can actually store sperm and reproduce regularly even with a shortage of males. And males also will mate with multiple females in one season. But as I stated before, areas of Southwest Florida are already seeing 95% females hatching. So we're already dealing with this issue. And at some point, we'll get to having not enough males to mate with and fertilize eggs if temperatures keep increasing and less males are born. So this is a very real issue that we're dealing with now. And while sea turtles have been around for millions of years and have experienced environmental ups and downs, they have not experienced an environmental change at the rate that we're seeing now. This was said by Jeanette Weineken, who is a professor of biological sciences in Boca Raton, Florida. Also, a study that was done by Allen and other authors concluded that climate change scenarios indicate that the problem of near feminization, or mostly females being born, for certain rookeries, which are nest locations of sea turtles, of different sea turtle species could occur within the next 10 to 15 years, which again is not that far from now. So it's pretty scary to think about. On the left here, we can see some more impacts of climate change on sea turtles, and I will be discussing some of these more as we continue. So Jeanette Weineken has also stated that sometimes eggs don't even get the chance to hatch because of how hot the sand has gotten due to a global increase in temperature. In 2016, it was reported that only 38% of sea turtles hatched, and many of those that did hatch were heat stressed, meaning they hatched and were so stressed out from it being so hot within their eggs that they either made it onto the sand and passed away, or they made it to the ocean and then passed away. So some ways to fight back against this heat stress and extreme heat that the sea turtles are incubating at is to provide protected nests with shading and or watering the sand around the nests. Here I have a video that focuses on Loggerhead Marine Life Center senior researcher Sarah Hirsch and what she saw in 2016 with loggerhead sea turtle eggs.
Summer months, sea turtle eggs are very sensitive to temperature changes. When the sand is too hot, the eggs don't stand a chance.
And that's definitely a cause for concern. There is a lethal temperature. And so with these hot and dry summers that we've had recently,
2016 was one of the worst loggerhead egg counts they've seen in years, down to 46%. Hirsch fears the trend continues this year, which is why her team is counting hatched eggs every morning.
So we wait 3 days after the nest hatches to dig down and inventory
So that's just a gist of what they were seeing in 2016. And then another interesting aspect of nature and climate change that is affecting sea turtles is waves hitting and breaking the shore, also called wave washover. So the Smithsonian has stated that the sea level is rising globally by about 3.4 millimeters a year and 5 to 8 inches since the pre-industrial era. According to NASA's observations from Space Page, most of the observed sea level rise is coming from meltwater of land-based ice sheets and mountain glaciers due to global warming that's melting that water down. And also something called thermal expansion, which due to the warmer water of the ocean, it's taking up more space, which is then adding to the sea level rise because extra heat is generated by global warming and it's absorbed by the ocean. So when strong storms touch down, they produce what's called storm surge. And excuse me, which is the abnormal rise in seawater during a storm. And it's measured as the height of the water above the normal or predicted astronomical tide. And this rise in sea level is going to make storm surges worse in the future. People in Southwest Florida, for example, that are living along the Gulf Coast, they also face a unique threat because of the shape of the coastline and also the continental shelf, which is wide and shallow and allows for more water to push onshore during storms, which increases storm surge. And as we all know, Southwest Florida and Florida in general is prone to hurricanes, and these will become more powerful as sea surfaces rise. According to researchers from the Florida State University Department of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Science, they have found that strong ocean waves can negatively impact sea turtle nests, even affecting egg incubation and embryo viability. Sustained exposure to those waves, so those waves breaking and hitting the shore over and over again, can affect how hatchlings function because when those harsh waves crash, sea turtle eggs, which are leathery and soft and very vulnerable, they allow different gases and elements to be exchanged between the embryo and the environment. So when waves hit the shore and hit the nest, this basically alters that exchange or stops it, which is very bad. So understanding just how beaches respond to storm events or how that response will change over the decades with climate change is going to become really important in order for us to save these shore species, such as sea turtles. And this graphic to the lower right is showing how thermal expansion in land ice is one of the leading causes of sea level rise. So what are the communities in Florida doing to combat climate change on the state and the wildlife? Crow is dedicated in various ways. One of those ways is holding seasonal speaker series programs. So through January through April, they hold these programs that you actually have to pay for, where professionals from Southwest Florida come in to engage and educate the audience on local conservation initiatives, which is really cool. The most recent one was done this April by Dr. Daniel Evans, who is a senior research biologist for the Sea Turtle Conservancy. He discussed tracking loggerhead sea turtles from one of the most important nesting sites in the world, which is the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, which houses some of the most important nesting beaches for loggerheads. And although I don't have a video or any other information, because again, you have to pay for these programs, he did discuss his findings and conservation implications of his satellite tracking of loggerheads, which is really cool. Crow also has research and conservation projects. So basically, they take what they see in the hospital and they apply that in advancing wildlife medicine and also trying to improve the health of the environment and the animals in it along with humans. So one of these projects was started in 2018, and they basically started taking samples from stranded sea turtles to check brevetoxin levels in the tissue and gut samples of these turtles. And this is still an ongoing project. Crow also has animal ambassadors. So these animal ambassadors were animals that came into the clinic with injuries or ailments. They were treated and they were found to be non-releasable. So they actually call Crow home now, and they are used to educate the public on what positive interactions look like with wildlife, and also also how we as humans should be connecting with the environment around us. So some of these animal ambassadors are Lola, the American kestrel, Talon, the red-tailed hawk, Gigi, the Virginia opossum, Billy, the nine-banded armadillo. This is, I forgot his name, Biscuit, the gopher tortoise, and Mina, the great horned owl. So very cute. I actually got to handle Gigi a lot, and she is just adorable. I really loved working with them. Also, local communities in the South Florida region have been hard at work trying to combat climate change as well. For example, in May of this year, the Renewable Energy Working Group held its first meeting on Sanibel Island. So civic leaders, business people, climate change activists, and educators all came together to address climate change through local renewable energy policies. So they want to collaborate with groups of local leaders in renewable energy, conservation, and water quality in the hopes of coming up with cost-effective energy policies for Sanibel to transition to, because they want to lessen the impact on rising global temperatures and sea levels, which we know is really affecting Southwest Florida. They want to do this by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, by showing the public how the economic benefits of renewable energy, and by mitigating long-term impacts and the costs of the effects of climate change and more. They hope to start locally with Sanibel, but then expand to the state and national levels to show Sanibel as a model of community success. So who knows, in the future, we might be looking at this group as a model for local renewable energy policies. Another regional group that met this year is the Southwest Florida Resiliency Compact. As you can see, these are the counties that are involved in the upper left picture. Lee County is where Sanibel is located, and then we also have Charlotte and Collier counties and their municipalities. The goal of this compact is to plan for sea level rise specifically, but to also help local governments basically assess other climate change vulnerabilities and try to find funding for the solutions, to really try to protect the Southwest Florida's coast from those climate change effects. And so they want to really be serious and have local local regular gatherings. They want to inform the public on what their ideas are. They want to have representation across many civic groups and also get schools and the community as a whole involved. So I can definitely see these two groups working together in the future as well. There's also the SCCF, or the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, which I actually drove past all the time while I was working at Crow. It's on Sanibel Island. Their mission is to protect and care for Southwest Florida's coastal ecosystems. And so they have many areas of focus, some of which include the wildlife and habitat management, sea turtle and shorebird research and monitoring. They have this really cool sea turtle program where they have volunteers come in and they will survey 18 miles of beach to check on the protected sea turtle nests. They'll respond to live and dead sea turtles that have washed up that people call in. And they also educate the public on some of those dangers that I listed before that sea turtles are facing. Along with that, they also have environmental education, environmental policy that they educate the public on. They have a marine laboratory, and they also have the Sanibel Sea School. So you should definitely check them out if you're ever in the Sanibel Island area. Lastly, you may be thinking, you know, I'm here in Illinois. How am I supposed to be helping with the issues that Southwest Florida is going through? It's not so much that, it's more about the small changes that you can perhaps make within your lifestyle or things that you can be a part of in Illinois just to help the environment in general. So for example, there's no real way to get rid of red tide, but there are ways that we can go about helping the oceans at home. For example, if you eat seafood, you can choose sustainable seafood products, whether it be in stores or in restaurants. I know that there are a lot of apps out there that help you in buying sustainable seafood. And when I say sustainable, I mean that they're harvested in ways that do not negatively impact the environment. They're practices that can be sustained long-term without destroying the species, but also while maintaining the well-being of the fishing economy. As you can see in the lower right graphic here, these are 4 simple ways to tell if you're buying sustainable food, which is seafood, which I think is very interesting. Also, as you've probably heard many times before, if you can try avoid using plastic, such as using those reusable straws, reusable bags, and also choosing biodegradable products, such as those made out of wood pulp, that when they are recycled, they can actually be reused. Also, if you're planning on taking a vacation and visiting the ocean, try using ocean-friendly products. I listed a website here that has some great ocean-friendly sunscreens and body products. And then in helping to save wildlife in general, we can first try reducing our carbon footprint. As you can see in the lower left graphic, you can do simple things like trying to carpool at least once a week, or maybe unplugging your computer every night for 1 month to save energy. Also, if you're visiting other places such as Sanibel Island, try not to buy souvenirs or other items that are made from critically endangered species, such as I know that some places sell hawksbill shells, so you just want to avoid buying those kinds of items. Also, when you are going for a swim in the beach or just visiting a beach, try to clean after yourself and others. There's this really cool thing on some of Sanibel's beaches, as you can see from the top picture. They have these fill a bag stations where you can literally grab a bag and go around the beach and pick up litter and then dispose of it properly, which I think is awesome. Also, it's one thing to be talking about wildlife and what they're going through, but it's another to see them in person and see them in their natural environments. So if you can go to see sea turtles hatching or animals in general in the environment, that's an awesome way to do that. And also, if you're passionate about this subject like I am, you can be an advocate for these animals and try to encourage government and companies and the public on how we can better protect these animals. And so I actually found a really cool resource. It's called biologicaldiversity.org, which you can see listed down below here. And you can click on that link and then find current actions that you can take part of in helping out wildlife. So I wanted to end this presentation quickly with some of the amazing releases that were done at Crow. And it just shows how amazing it is to see these animals who have suffered from injuries or ailments that may or may not be due to climate change recover and be released into their natural habitats. So this first video is of a juvenile double-crested cormorant being released after having red tide symptoms. As you can see, he's a little hesitant at first, and I'm going to fast forward. We kind of had to give him like the little push to get out in the water. He's very cute. And then here I was actually able to release this Cooper's hawk myself. And he was found unable to fly, but fortunately with just a couple days of cage rest, he was able to be released. And this was a beautiful thing to be a part of. So there I am releasing him off into the forest. And then lastly, I apologize. I wasn't actually a part of this, but this is a green sea turtle that was released, if the video will even play. And he was found with red tide symptoms. He couldn't dive underwater. He couldn't raise his head well. But here it's amazing. He was released. So there he is swimming off back into his home. So that's exactly why I wanted to speak today and educate others about what our planet is experiencing that is in turn affecting the beautiful animals and environment we have around us, and just some things that we can do to help. So are there any questions?
Well, so first of all, let's please thank Ms. Mormino for this amazing presentation. Everybody, round of applause, thumbs
Thank
up.
you.
Those celebratory megaphones, whatever the heck they are. Thank you. There you go. Proud mom. Thank you. And if you want to type a question in the chat, I can ask it, or please raise your hand and we will call upon you to unmute. So are there any questions? Or feel free to unmute. We're all family now.
I have a question for Arianna.
Yes,
Yes.
please. Bobby.
I was wondering, I know you working in Florida with these animals and the conservation efforts. Do you know, is that spreading? Are there efforts being launched in, like Louisiana, California, Texas, places like that?
That's a good question. I actually don't know specifically if other states are implementing the same kind of things. I would hope so, especially because I know that there are wildlife rehab centers all over the place, and I know that there are other groups that do those kinds of things. I don't know specifically, but yeah, I hope that they are. And I know that with what Southwest Florida is doing, it's definitely gaining a lot of attention. It's all over the news, and so I definitely think that other states are aware of it and hopefully implementing it as well.
And as you say, they have the rehab centers across different places. So
exactly.
Good. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Other questions?
Can you share what was like an eye-opening for you when you were doing the internship that you shared a lot of things, but what was something that you will always remember from Crow Clinic?
That is another great question. Something, I mean, this isn't related to climate change, but one of the amazing things that I was able to witness and be a part of was this burrowing owl had come in and it had like a laceration on its eye. And I thought that the animal was going to have to be euthanized because, how can a bird live in the wild with one eye? But actually, I came to learn that owls have such great vision that even with one eye, they're able to survive. So I was able to be a part of this surgery that's called an eye evisceration, which is basically where the whole eye is taken out, or basically it's eviscerated, right? So they pound up the eye, like they crush it up and then they take it out and they stitch it back up. And he was doing well the next day. And that was truly amazing because then I got to see him be released, and I'll never forget that. And I was in the surgery room while it was done. So yeah, that was one of the many cool experiences I had.
Hi,
That's amazing.
I have a question.
Yes.
Please.
Has this experience, how has it impacted the area that you hope to concentrate maybe in veterinary medicine?
That is a great question. So I knew going into it, it was something that I was interested in. It was definitely eye-opening in that, you know, you never know what you're going to expect in wildlife medicine, which is something that I really enjoyed and I could see myself going into. But it's also a little sad because there are a lot of euthanasias that are done because unfortunately, if an animal has something where it's not going to be able to survive in the wild, we don't have room to keep it in the clinic. So we have to make some tough decisions. But that's just, it's something that you have to do in veterinary medicine in general. But I would definitely say that I'm still interested in going into wildlife medicine, more so now that I've had this experience. So I definitely have that in the back of my mind as I'm, you know, hearing from schools and thinking about the future. It's definitely something I'm still interested in. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Did you see any species that were not from the area at the crow clinic?
Yes, so there are a lot of invasive species. There are invasive species all over the place. I mean, even in Illinois, we have invasive species, as many of you probably know. But we had things such as collared doves come in, which are invasive. We had green iguanas, which you wouldn't think that they'd be invasive to Florida because when I think of Florida, I think of lizards and, you know, those kinds of reptiles and stuff like that. But they are invasive. So we had a lot of those types of animals come in. What advice do you have for someone who wants to do something like this? Was asked by Natalia. Um, I would definitely say if you're interested in helping animals or maybe you're interested in veterinary medicine, definitely look online for opportunities. That's exactly how I found out about the Crow Clinic. And then you just have to look at their prerequisites and what they're expecting when you apply. So for example, the Crow Clinic, I had to have, I believe, 2 letters of recommendation. I had to send them my resume. I had to have some sort of animal experience. So there are requirements to join certain programs like that. But you could also start small. I mean, you could start shadowing again, like at your close vet clinic, or with animals that you're interested in, like horses and farm animals, if you're into that kind of stuff. You can also start volunteering at places like shelters, um, or other places that you may find online, and never be afraid to contact these people. I mean, most of these people are very excited that you're taking an interest in the field or taking an interest in animals. So just put yourself out there, and if it's something that you're passionate about, then just look up things online and something will definitely come your way.
Great advice. Thank you. Thank you, Arianna. Appreciate it. Would you be willing to share with me and Professor Khalil a copy of your PowerPoint in the event that folks want to reach out to us and get a copy?
Of course, yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you. Yeah, so we will make available, or Professor Khalil will, a copy of Arianna's PowerPoint and a copy, a video of this session in the event that you and or your students would like to see that. So again, we have a minute left, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you all very much for joining us. And again, a round of applause for the amazing Arianna Mormino.
Thank you for letting me be a
The
part
one
of
and
this.
only.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate you being willing to come back and share this your knowledge, your expertise, and this amazing experience and inspiration. I mean, really, I think your advice just a minute ago about just find these things and don't be afraid to inquire is great advice for all of our students. You're a trailblazer for us.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Well, thank you. Thank you for